see that or not, but again, work your way down, solder each chip one at a time. So now we've replaced the chip. So we've checked the wire's alright, there's no breaks, no cuts, cleaned off the top of it. Our circuit board is ready to be replaced into the housing. A little bit of water still left in it, so I'm going to pause and dry these off with a towel, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, now what I've done is I've laid my towel back down here, give me the clean surface that I need, and I'm bringing the parts back in. Now you'll notice that there's still a few little drops of water here. That's not, won't hurt anything as long as you wait a few minutes before you plug it in and turn it on. As long as there's no power here, you won't have a problem with the water. The way that it goes back, that's notched. It doesn't matter how that goes. You can get it in any direction. Then note that the black dots go towards you. You don't want them facing down like that or they won't make contact. That's actually metal that will actually bridge the gap on here when you push down on those. So that one's been replaced. This one doesn't have any buttons, it's just one unit, and note the notch hole here that goes over, so that goes like that. Then replace the two red buttons, A and B buttons, and the silicon membrane that goes over it, and now you've got all three of them back in place the proper way. Put the circuit board the direction it needs to go. There's some notches here that these retaining pins will hold it. Then feed your cable down through here, feed it back around. What it needs to do is go around, I don't know if you can see that, around those, through there, and out the opening. So now we've got a strain relieved circuit board. A little too much strain on here, so I'm going to pull it back a little. And there we go. And we've got it like that. So now, with the cord coming out, we're prepared to put the back on. Now as you apply the back, make sure the cord is directed properly. Everything's in place. Cord's direct properly. Place it on its face and replace the screws. Alright, next we're going to talk about the RF switch. Now, the back of the Nintendo has an RCA plug on the back where the RF switch plugs into. There's some problems that can be associated with that, which we'll cover later when we handle the control deck. But typically what happens, just like the controller cord, there's an RCA cord on the end of this. The RCA cord gets bent back and forth, put in here and gets bent back and forth, and you get a bad connection here, or you have an animal that chews on it. Now, and you've attached the RF switch properly to the television. You have your antenna coming in here, and this going out to your TV, plugging into your television. What will happen is, when there's no power here, there's two transistors in here that are switching transistors, that when power is applied here, it actually cuts off this path to the television and redirects the Nintendo into the television, so that you now have electricity flowing in this direction while the antenna is shut off. Once the Nintendo is powered down, it turns this off and reconnects the direction to this direction into the television, so your antenna is hooked right back up to your television. Of all the units that I've repaired, the most common problem, again, is cord damage. If the cord is damaged somewhere in the middle, somewhere close to this, you can take the top off of this and shorten it. Again, cutting it here and shortening it here. It's a little tricky to get it back in here. If the cord is damaged on this end, again, you can cut it here, pull it short, and go into your neighborhood Radio Shack dealer. You can purchase an RCA plug to put on the end of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually replace this one to show you how to replace the end. Again, for those of you that are advanced and want to get to the control unit, you may want to fast forward. But for those of you that need this, I'm going to go through it. The other problem that I've seen, if you check this coax, it's also damaged. And you'll find that this tip has either been bent or broke off. Usually what I do in that case is I go down to a VCR shop and I buy a patch cord. And I simply take them that are preformed and I cut off about 6 inches of the end of one of the patch cords, F connector to F connector patch cord, and I cut it and solder it back into here. And so I replace this whole piece right here. And again, I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Most of the time, the RF switch is pretty reliable. I've never yet, of the 200 or some that I've done to date, I've never yet had to replace anything, knock on wood, anything inside this. So that's the theory behind the RF switch. Again, what you'll need to replace the RCA plug on the end, wire cutters, wire strippers, you'll need a little roll of solder, and then what I use are Radio Shack catalog number 274339. It's a set of metal shielded phono plugs. These are a little tighter going in than these are and a little more difficult to take out. But as you use them, they get a little easier to use. So I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to open up the pack and pull out one of these RCA jacks. Now, you'll notice that there's two pieces to it. The shield comes off, and you normally want to set that aside. Now, again, find the point where it's damaged. If this itself is damaged, you'll want to cut it off just as close to that as you can. But again, let's say that the damage occurs somewhere in here. There's a cat bite or a dog bite or a cut or a burn or it's been on the lamp or something, and it's right in here. So what we'll do is we'll cut it just past the cut. The cut would be up in here, and again we throw that portion away. What we want to do now is we want to take, and this is kind of tricky, you want to strip off enough so that the center lead, and I'll show you why that's necessary in just a minute, you want to strip off enough so that the center lead extends completely through that. So what I usually do is lay it next to it and measure it off and then strip off enough so that that whole thing comes off at one time. It's kind of tricky and takes a little practice to do it, but you want to cut through the coax and the shield, but leaving the inner portion intact so that you don't get a breach of insulation here. Then you want to come back about 1/4 of an inch and remove just the insulation from the shield, leaving the shield intact. Here, if we can get it. There we go. So now we've got about 1/4 inch of shield there, and we have our wire up front. Now the wire will, the center of the coax will fit through, but you'll need to strip off about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch of that in order for it to protrude through the end of the connector. Now don't forget to slide the shield over the end of it. So slide the shield over the end so it's on there. And sometimes what I do is I tie a little knot right here so that the shield doesn't go sliding all the way down, and it's kind of a nuisance to have to get that a little later. So that's what it should look like, something like that. Now, some people prefer, rather than to just hold the shield on with a crimp, to solder it. It's up to you, whichever you want to do. What I'll usually do is insert that through, like that. You'll notice that it's sticking out of the end. Again, I prop my solder up so that I don't need 3 hands here. And